Hi everyone, welcome to the first Greece Public Library book break. My name is Kirstra. I am one of the librarians at Greece Public Library. I manage the adult nonfiction collection. I work with programming for adults, and I moderate the Pints and Prose book discussion group, as well as the virtual science fiction and fantasy book discussion group. And I am here with Claire. You want to introduce yourself, Claire?
Yes, I am Claire. I'm also a librarian at Greece Public Library. I buy the teen collection and tween collection. I coordinate the teen advisory board and also moderate a couple of book groups, the As the Page Turns, and then the virtual historical fiction book group on Facebook, and the teen book group on Facebook too.
So what we're going to do today is just talk a little bit about some of the books that we've been reading on quarantine. It's been, about 6 weeks since we have been working from home. We've got, looks like at least 2 more weeks to go. So I know I've been getting some reading done. I'm sure Claire has been getting some reading done. And we figured, I'm always looking for more recommendations. So let's just talk a little bit about what we've been reading and some books that we can recommend for you all. You want to start with one, Claire?
Sure. I don't know about everybody else, but I miss my hardcover books. So I went ahead and joined the Book of the Month Club. Now I know this is backwards, but this is called Valentine, and it's by Elizabeth Wetmore. It was the Jenna's Fiction Club pick. So if you ever watch any of like Reese Witherspoon or Jenna Bush Hager, they always have a book of the month, and Valentine was Jenna's pick. I chose it because it looked like something that would be good for a book club. The story synopsis is it's Valentine's night in 1976 in Odessa, Texas, and 14-year-old Gloria Ramirez appears on the porch in the early morning hours of Mary Rose Whitehead's ranch, and she has been attacked. So from there, the town is polarized on how they react to this event, and it's really gives you an insight into several characters' point of view. And that was the only one of the criticisms I had, is sometimes I had to really, my mind is a little foggy right now, so I had to work at following along on which character and how they fit into the storyline. But it's intersecting themes of violence, race, and class, which I think would be great for any book discussion, and how the different characters reacted and what happened, to polarize the town. So some of the main characters are, of course, Gloria, the 14-year-old girl who's been attacked, Mary Rose, who is a young wife and mother whose ranch she showed up at. And then there's a couple neighbors, Ginny, who is a mom who actually runs away to start a new life, but leaves behind her daughter, Deborah Ann, and you get to hear from both of these characters. Corinne, who is a recent widow in town. And that's about it. But between all of those different people, you start to get a timeline and a feel for the events and what's going on with the town. So if you like historical fiction, and if you like book discussions and some meaty things to discuss, I'd recommend Valentine for you.
Nice. Now, I may be telling tales out of school, but do I remember that you said that you weren't in love with the ending? That left you?
I was not in love with an ending, but I don't want to give it away, but I think that'll be a great discussion point, and whether you say that was justice served, was the right thing done. Kind of like the crux of the book is what happens after this event. You kind of start with a bang and move right on. And I personally wasn't pleased with it, but it'd be interesting to see what other people think.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So what you been reading?
So I've been reading a lot of escapist fiction, like mysteries, thrillers. I've actually been having a lot of trouble sort of focusing on anything more serious than that. Not to denigrate mysteries and thrillers. I love them. I read a lot of them. But I just need something that sort of keeps me busy and keeps me going.
I can relate, totally.
Hard. So the first book that I wanted to talk about is The Lost Man by Jane Herbert. And I devoured this book in like a day and a half. It's not super long, but it's definitely engaging and keeps you reading and keeps you going. So it's set in the Australian outback, on a cattle station. So one of these just enormous ranches right on the edge of the desert where, I mean, basically everything in Australia is out to kill you, right? Like spiders the size of your head, like all of these poisonous creatures, and heat that like if you stay out for a day, you are going to be dead of exposure. So that's what sets the story off. The main character's brother is found dead in the outback. He has died of exposure. His truck is nowhere to be seen. So the central mystery is, how did he get there? Was it an accident? Was it foul play? But there's lots of family dynamics at play, and sort of the relationships in these extremely isolated small towns, not even towns, like they talk about it's a 3-hour drive to your nearest neighbor, let alone town, which is so completely different from the way that we live. It was really fascinating to get a glimpse into that way of life and that landscape. The landscape is almost, another character in the book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just extremely atmospheric, very compelling. So we see our main character sort of working through a lot of family issues and traumas and relationship issues that he's clearly never dealt with. And as they sort of peel back layers, you get to see more and more of the dysfunction and the way of life. But ultimately, it's got a hopeful ending, which I appreciated. So really, really liked that one. Good, excellent, quick read.
Yeah, I liked her other books too, Jane Harper. And like you said, she definitely makes Australia like the country as part of a character in the book. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so she's got 2 other related mysteries. So they share some of the same characters, and those are The Dry and Force of Nature. So I read both of those too. Really liked them.
Yeah. Speaking of places that are, now why are mine backwards and yours not?
That's a Zoom thing, so you look backwards to yourself, but it looks face forward to everyone else, so we can read the title.
Okay. The things we learn on Zoom. All right. So I don't normally like Westerns, but this book, I had to reread it. It's one of my favorites. I read it for our book group a couple of years ago. It's called News of the World by Paulette, Giles. And it's kind of set like right after the Civil War in Texas. I don't know why I'm on this Texas theme, but here I go. Actually, all 3 of my books are, but I digress. So News of the World, it's like a spark, kind of the atmosphere sets the story. It actually is a National Book Award winner finalist, but you get into these characters right away. And there's 2 main characters. It's Captain Jefferson Kyle Kidd, who was an ex-Confederate officer and now drifts through Texas reading newspapers to a lot of the townspeople who can't read for themselves. So while he's drifting around, he comes into contact with people he's known, and then a man offers him a $50 gold piece to return a young girl back to her relatives in San Antonio. Now, he's in his 70s. This is not something that he really wants to do, but he's a man of integrity. So this person that asked him knows that if he gives him the money and gives him the girl, that he will get the job done and he will be fair. So he begrudgingly takes this assignment. The girl, her family 4 years ago had been attacked by the Kiowa, and her family was killed, but they raised her as their own. She really didn't want to leave. She is totally acclimated to the Kiowa lifestyle. But over this trip of 400 miles, she begins to trust the captain, and they, of course, run into a lot of trouble, including a predator who was after the young girl, Joanna. So I don't want to give away the ending of the novel, but of course a relationship develops. They get to where she's supposed to live. It's not quite what he was hoping it would be. So he has to make a decision as what to do with her. And it really was good at the end. If you liked True Grit or even like the movie, which I loved both, it's just a really good read. A lot of people in my book group absolutely loved it, even though when we first did it as a choice, they were like, what, a Western? But it was really, really good. So
nice. Yeah, as you were talking, I was like, this sounds a lot like kind of the flavor of True Grit, which I love too.
Yeah.
So I might have to put that one on my list.
Yeah, I think both of us read True Grit for our read across the strait. So yeah, if you like True Grit, you will love this. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Add that to the list.
Yeah.
So my next book, another kind of suspenseful thriller, is In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. I don't have a cover to show you because I listened to that one on Hoopla. So I love listening to audiobooks. I listen while I cook and clean and like do yard work and that kind of stuff. And I really enjoy having books read to me. So that works. Especially when they're set like in another country. So Ruth Ware is a British author. Her books take place in the UK. So I get to have all of these lovely British accents in my ear. So exactly. So the premise of In a Dark, Dark Wood is our main character, Nora, gets an invitation to the hen party, the hen do, or sort of bachelorette weekend for her high school best friend. So we know that, right away, we know that Nora and Claire used to be very close. We know that they are estranged. They haven't spoken in something like 10 years. And we know that Nora's got secrets. So I will say one thing that Ruth Ware does really well is sort of tease secrets and revelations, like you know that there's something else going on, and she gives you just those little bits of information along the way to start to put things together. So I like that. It keeps me reading or listening. It keeps me engaged with the story. So Nora agrees to go on this hen do, and it's a weekend in this beautiful modernist glass house in the woods. And of course, they are alone in the woods with no cell reception. So immediately things start going wrong. Everyone has secrets. No one is as they seem. And you, as the book goes along, you start to find out more and more about each character, and especially the relationship between Claire and Nora, and why they've become estranged. And I will not spoil anything, but there are many red herrings. There's a very sort of nail-biting conclusion at the end. So I really enjoyed it. I have the feeling, I think I said this to you before, Claire, that this is one of those books, like, I really enjoyed it. It got me through, you know, however long it took to listen to. I was engaged, I was with it. I have a feeling if I stopped and really started analyzing it and pulling it, some of the threads, that it might not hold together super well. Like, I think there are a few loose ends in there and maybe some things that are not super plausible. if you stop and think about it. But if you just sort of let yourself get swept along with the story, it's very entertaining.
Right. It's definitely one of those, because I read that one too, and I like one of the unreliable narrator type things too.
Yeah, for sure. So if you like that one, you'll probably like others of Ruth Ware. So she also wrote The Woman in Cabin 10, The Death of Mrs. Westaway. I think her most recent was The Turn of the Key. That came out. I haven't
read that one yet. Did she read Into the Water? Was that her as well?
No, that's Paula Hawkins, who wrote The Girl on the Train.
Right.
I haven't read The Girl on the Train, but I did read Into the Water, and I really enjoyed it. So all of those, I think, are kind of the same sort of genre.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, my last one is not something that you would think of. All of mine, too, I forgot to mention, are available on Hoopla in one way, shape, or form. The first one, Valentine, the actual ebook isn't available, but the audiobook is available if you like listening to books. News of the World, I believe the ebook and audiobook are available on Hoopla. And believe it or not, my last one, I love cookbooks. This is Magnolia Table. Now, I own this book, but I was shocked when I was kind of going through Hoopla to see it was available. So I thought, what a great way to either test out a cookbook, find a new recipe while we're home, to see if you might want to purchase it for your own cookbook collection, because I know many of us that have cookbooks, of course, have a collection. So some of the things, and that's why I was so stunned, because I was like, all my books are set in Texas, because of course that's where Joanna and Chip Gaines are. But there's a bunch of good recipes in here. I think her biscuit recipe is excellent, and I'm pretty picky about my biscuits. There's a curry chicken salad for lunch. There's a King Ranch casserole that you could make, chicken piccata with artichoke hearts, and a beef stew with jalapeno cornbread. And I also like cornbread. I like all those Southern things. So deviled eggs with bacon, but you kind of get like a little flavor. I don't know how this would go. It's so nice to hold on to a cookbook, but you know, if you're interested in Joanna Gaines, haven't seen the cookbook yet, I highly suggest that you try to check that one out, and also see what else is available on Hoopla, because they have health books and all different kinds of things that I don't think people would be looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the bonus borrows right now, so they're doing a bonus borrows section on Hoopla. So those are titles that aren't going to count against your 5 checkouts per month limit, which is great, because I know a lot of us who've been using Hoopla lately have been hitting that limit pretty consistently.
Yeah.
But they've got like some mindfulness books and self-help in addition to cookbooks. So they do have kind of a surprising depth of nonfiction. They've got a lot of travel books too, travel guides. Ooh. So if you are like me, itching to get out of your house and back into the world, you could do armchair traveling with the travel guides in Hoopla too, or plan your next vacation for whenever we're allowed to vacation again.
Which we hope will be soon.
I hope so. So my last book is another Hoopla audiobook. I am listening to Strangers on the Train by Patricia Highsmith. So this is the same author who wrote The Talented Mr. Ripley, which is probably, I would say, at least for my generation, probably the most well-known of her books. After the movie was made in, what was it, the late 90s, they did a movie of The Talented Mr. Ripley. There's also a movie of Strangers on the Train. I have not watched it, but I am going to see if it's on any of my streaming services as soon as I finish the book. So the idea here is that 2 completely unconnected men, 2 strangers, meet on a train, and one of them hatches this plan whereby they should each commit a murder for the other. They each have someone that they would like out of their lives, so they should commit these murders for each other, and then the police will never be able to put it together because they have no connection. They just met on the train. What can go wrong, right? So it's interesting because there's a lot more in there about sort of the emotional manipulation that happens between the two men. Bruno, who is the guy who sort of hatches this plan, he is all about it. He's got this plan. Let's do these murders. And Guy, who is the other stranger from the train, starts out being like, you are crazy. I want nothing to do with this. Get out of my life. And then Bruno does his murder, which Guy did not ask him or really want him to do. And it sets off this whole chain of events. And there's a little bit, it's reminding me a little bit right now of, I haven't quite finished, of Crime and Punishment, where there's a lot just about Guy's sort of psychological state as Bruno is working on him. Are you ready to fill your side of the bargain? I'm not going to spoil what happens on this book that's, 80 years old. No spoilers. But it's really interesting, and I've got about a quarter or a third of the book left. So I'm interested to see how it wraps up, because at this part, Guy is basically like falling apart. And I don't know whether it's going to end up with he just falls apart completely, or whether he's going to manage to sort of pull himself up and get out of the situation. So I'm interested to see how that goes.
Yeah. Ooh, that sounds good. Sounds kind of Agatha Christie-like too, or a lot of psychological suspense.
Yeah, I've got to look it up. I think the movie, it's a classic film noir. I want to say it was a Hitchcock, but I could be wrong about that. I forgot to actually check before we started talking. But definitely of that ilk, the sort of noir mystery genre there. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Cool. So what else have you been sort of doing, keeping yourself occupied? Do you have any other suggestions where else we can look for suggestions or books to read? I'm putting you on the spot. We didn't talk.
Yes, you are. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank.
Sure. Well, I will put in just a quick plug for our many book discussion groups at the library. So most of those have moved into the virtual space while we are all stuck at home. So as the page turns and Pints and Prose are both adult book discussion groups, those are both meeting on Zoom, at least for April. April we met in May, and then who knows what'll happen with June. But information about those is on our online event calendar on our website. We also have a bunch of virtual book discussion groups that meet on Facebook. So we've got them for mystery, historical fiction, nonfiction, and science fiction and fantasy. So you can find information about all of those on our website and join there. All of our virtual book discussion groups are using Hoopla books right now, so books available on Hoopla, so that we can make sure everyone has access to them while the physical building is closed. So unless, Claire, you have anything else, any parting words?
Just keep reading and tune in, and hopefully we'll have some other good suggestions, or other staff members will have suggestions for you in the coming weeks. So
absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. We are going to wrap it here, and hopefully we will see you next week.